week's episode of No Frills Small Business Podcast.
Hi, I'm Carlota.
And I'm Marie Segaris. In this week's episode, we're going to be this month's episode. We're all focused on using Google Plus for your small business. And you'll be able to find the audio version of this after the show is over at nofrillsmallbusiness.com/6. And we'll also usually put some links and a couple of notes there as well. So let's talk a little bit about where we came up with this idea. So we just had some fun last week. Do you want to share?
Yeah, we were at Blogger on Friday. We were part of a social media boot camp presentation, and we talked about Google. Marie did more of the technical stuff about actually setting up the Google Hangout, and I was there to just give a little bit of flavor. So we were part of a panel. We only had altogether about 15 minutes. So it was really like brief in and out about Google. And we decided that this month's episode should be a little bit more about the whole of Google, why it's so helpful. Because I know that a lot of people, I have a lot of clients, I have friends who, when I suggest using, as I've done, your Google Plus account, your Google Plus profile as like a starter website, I have clients who are like, but nobody's on Google. Nobody uses it. And
just
like
the millions.
And it's like, okay, because I've used
nobody except those millions.
those crazy millions of people around the world, because I just know that I've used it and I have been very successful. I mean, we do these hangouts there. We've gotten a lot of opportunities out of that. I mean, it brings me in probably 1 to 2 clients a week. And I just think that when you're using Google Plus correctly, it really is like a starter website. So many people nowadays have decided, I want to blog, or I want to write a book, or I want to become an entrepreneur because it's so trendy. And so it's like, well, I've got to have a website. I mean, I still think social media now is really evolving. I'm not 100% sure anymore you need to have a website, but starting a website from scratch, it's a lot of responsibility. It's like deciding your voice.
Well, especially if there's other elements to your business, right?
Right. I mean, I mean, my business officially started in 2008. I had a blog, and now I have a website, but I would say that the website I have today in 2015, it took probably 3 to 4 years to evolve. And it's going to keep changing because I'm going to start doing videos soon. I just think Google Plus, if you go onto your profile, they make it so easy. They really give you spaces where they're like, tell us what you do. Tell us where you've gone to school. Here's some links so that, here's where you can share links about like events you've gone to, articles you've written, and every day. And then you can also just share everything from like, I'm reading this book, or I saw this article in the newspaper, or I went to this concert. It's a great way to start figuring out what's my voice, what's my brand, who's my audience, all stuff that you're really going to have to know strategically when you eventually do your website. So before, if you're at home thinking about, I want to have a blog, I want to have a website, whatever, before you decide that Gmail is just for like tech men, because I think that's what some people think. They're like, well, it's just men, it's just like 10 men on there talking about tech. It's like, you might actually want to like log in and see what other people are doing. I mean, because there's tons of companies on it, celebrities, artists, writers. I mean, I know you've got communities of thousands.
Yeah. So just a couple things that I like about Google Plus compared to other social networks is that there isn't any kind of character limit. So you can write long form posts, like Carlotta's saying. You could write essentially a blog post in a post there.
Right.
It's very, 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 very searchable. So obviously, because Google's behind it, they want you to find content there. So if you write, essentially a long form post and you say a lot of informative things, it might be showing up in Google searches about that topic. So that's great. So I love that as well. I also like how, for me, it has some of the features of all my favorite social networks. So, you can put pretty big images, which is nice. You can use text, which is great. You can hashtag if you want. You can mention other people. You can tag them. So there's a lot of different elements to it. It's not just me talking. But to go back to your point about the profile page, if you are, kind of not sure what to say, it does guide you through. It even has a part
Completely
called
guides.
bragging rights, you know,
I
so
mean-
you can, and a tagline. It also allows you so many links. So you can link to all your other websites, videos, whatever it is. So that's really a great feature as well. I think that's something that really stands out compared to other social networks, because most other networks, you can put a couple of links and it's only maybe to specific sites. You won't be able to, you know, link to every other profile or website that you want. And there you can, which is great. And then on top of that, your header picture, you can put text, you can put images, you can do whatever you want there as well. And I usually do that in Canva. I change mine periodically. They have a Google Plus header size. So you just kind of upload whatever images and put whatever font, and then you can, you know, even if you don't want to, you can either keep it the same or you can change it periodically if you want. So I like that feature as well. So there's a lot of good stuff to it. And then, as you said, it's not just for tech men. Not that there's anything wrong with them, but I think it has this perception that it's only used by, you know, men that are really, really into technology, and that's just, you know, not really true. So to give a couple of like you're talking about with the communities, one of the things in Google Plus, there's groups, and those are called communities. And when I first got on Google Plus, I was shocked that there were huge communities for crochet with like 30,000 members and stuff. And I just had the same perception. Oh, this is only for men. This is only for technology. Right. I didn't realize there's people on there, you know, talking, sharing pictures of their projects for all the same reasons. People that aren't bloggers, that are just, you know, a person at home that wants to share their stuff, and they don't want to set up a blog. They don't have a website. And here's a great place that they can do that, and people can look at it. And so that's really nice. So those are some of the, you know, the general features. So besides the profile, the communities.
I was also going to say, like, what I like about it is because I mean, I write also for HuffPo. So I will share on Google Plus maybe an article, my latest HuffPo articles or my blog. People can add you. You can add friends, and people can add you. And I'm at this point now where I've had people adding me, like adding me to their circles from all around the world. So I'll put something up, like a blog I wrote or an article I wrote, and it'll start getting comments. And these people are frequently, sometimes they're looking for a coach, sometimes they're just interested in the article, and they're like, oh, I didn't even realize you coach. I mean, I just think it's another social media platform that, like any of them, it's as good as or as bad as you make it. So you can either decide, like, there's no one on Gmail, on Google Plus who could ever help you, that you have to spend a ton of money and have a website and, you know, hire the most expensive designer, and more power to you. Or I think I've done this with numerous clients, take some time, write out your Google Plus profile, and then just let it marinate there. Yeah. You can literally edit it every 5 minutes for the rest of your life.
If you want.
If you were that disciplined, let's just say disciplined. Or you can put it up there and think about it and have, like, friends look at it yourself and be like, what kind of persona is this person putting across? And that way, I mean, for me at least, when I've been revising my website, I was able to go back to Google Plus, to LinkedIn, to Facebook, to other things, and be like, okay, you know what, now I want to focus on this way. So I just think, and we certainly didn't get a chance to really talk about this at Blogger because it was a whole social media boot camp, but I think that it can be potentially a huge resource. I mean, I've had, and I also love about Google Plus, you can have sort of public conversations. Yeah. So I'll tag, like, Marie and stuff, articles that I'm putting up that I think should be amused by, or I'll tag, like, clients of mine. And I've shared stuff, like information about, I don't know, stuff you can do for free in New York, or small business resources. And then people will publicly, you know, +1 that and comment. And those conversations, I mean, it's another form of networking. Sure. Those online conversations, when you're presenting well on social media, you're not just you're showing your passion. And those conversations, many of them have led to people then emailing me privately and saying, oh, can we talk? So again, it really is like, how are you, before you dismiss it, try it. You might like it.
You might like it. I just want to add a couple things for people who aren't familiar, or, you know, maybe are on Google Plus but haven't really used it that often. So to kind of restate or, you know, emphasize what Carlota was saying about the conversations, if you, you know, if you put the plus sign and the person's name, they actually get an email. So they can respond directly from their email. They don't have to come onto Google Plus, or they can go onto Google Plus if they want. And so it's a great way of getting information to people a little bit more directly. And you can put a lot of those people in if you want to, because there aren't those character counts. So like on Twitter, yeah, you can have a conversation, but if, you know, with 2 people and if their names are long, there's not much you can say in the 140 characters.
It's like one-liners.
Right. Yeah, it's more like one-liners. But if you wanted to really have some, you know, bigger conversation, you can do it in Google Plus. You can also, you know, you can make, usually your posts will be public by default, although you can change them to be private posts. You could essentially send a post just to one person whose email you don't have, but they're in your Google Plus network. So it's a way to sort of get into their email indirectly. And you can also send all the people in your circles a message. And so that's why I have my circles set up in different types. So I have circles that are friends, circles that are family, circles that are businesses, circles that are crochet and knitting, circles that are podcasters, circles that are bloggers. You know, you could set them up however you want. And then let's say, you know, you have a circle of, you know, or like, for example, we just came back from BlogHer 15, a conference. So I have, for every conference that I go to, I have my own circle of people that I meet there. So let's say something happens, you know, next year, I could say, hey, are you going this year? And I could send that to all the people I met from this year. So if you set up your circles so that they're not just kind of random piles, you can actually use that to send out particular messages about specific topics. Also, another cool thing is you don't have to be the person's, you know, you don't have to know them or be their friend, and they don't have to approve you being in their circle or you adding them to your circle.
Right.
So that's great. It's a nice way to kind of connect with people that maybe you don't know in real life and you wouldn't be able to meet them otherwise. So, and they might just see your content in their stream and say something about it. So that's the cool thing with circles, I think. If you organize them well, you can get a lot of use out of them that way. So
also, I mean, as we were saying a little bit earlier, there's a lot of companies increasingly putting out content. I mean, so yeah, of course, like on any social media, there's people, you know, because I work with a lot of artists, I have followed a number of like artist communities, and I had to, frankly, going to be honest, unfollow them because I couldn't handle all the bad art. I was like, I'm one person.
Turn off notifications.
Yeah, I was like, this is killing me. But there's a lot of companies which were sharing unique, interesting content, giving you ideas about stuff that, you know, it can get overwhelming. Like on Facebook, your news feed can just explode. But I find sometimes it's just good to have these different, I guess, profiles, these different kind of ways to find out about what companies are doing, because there's so much information. It can really become overwhelming no matter what you're doing.
Well, I think another thing with Google Plus, why people kind of have not dived in as much. I mean, they have a huge number of users, but not maybe as many people that are checking it, you know, 10 times a day, like Facebook, let's say, is that it's been difficult to schedule posts. So for people that are content creators, so maybe you're a blogger or a podcaster, or, you know, you just a writer, any one of those things, a filmmaker, you know, you maybe during the day, you might be focused on your writing today. So you don't want to disrupt it by going on to Google Plus multiple times, but you still want to keep your presence active. And so for a long time, you couldn't schedule on there. And so people kind of said, well, I can't use this because I can't be literally on there all the time. But now many of the social scheduling tools like Hootsuite and Buffer and all of that allow you to schedule to a Google Plus page. So if you set up a page for your business, which is a little bit different from your personal page, you can schedule posts to that page. So that's another option for people that kind of want to share more content there, but don't necessarily want to be on the platform as many times throughout the day. So that's something else you could consider, is having a page. And so a page, you can be a brand, you can be a local business. I forget what the other two are, but there's a couple of different options, and then there's an other. So you can choose the one that best fits your particular company, and then you can set that up as a separate page that can have its own posts and its own circles. And so you can use your same circles or different. So for instance, I just recently set up a business page for Underground Crafter, which is my crochet and knitting business. So I took my circles of people that were related to crochet and knitting, but not the people that are, you know, my uncle that's not interested in crocheting, or, you know, a person I know from, you know, teaching at a college that isn't interested in crochet. So I did use some of the same circles. So I was able to kind of bring over that network, but I didn't bring them if it didn't really make sense for that particular business. So that's another option.
Now, do you, because I just honestly just use my personal account. Did you have to start another email?
No, it's all from the same email. You can actually have multiple pages from the same email. I know this because I work with a small yarn company on their social media, and they actually have a couple of different pages. And so to relate to that, you can you yourself personally can have more than one page, but you can also manage other people's pages. So let's say in your situation with your client, without getting into their Gmail, they can be the administrator and you can be the manager. So let's say you have a client who wants you to, like, write their whole profile, spruce up something, add their profile, whatever. They can give you authority as a manager to go in there, and you can change the profile or update their pictures or what have you. Or like I said, you could share a post on there. So that's kind of good because you don't have to give out your actual personal information. You can assign them this manager role, and then they can oversee your page or be one of the people that oversee your page. So I've seen a couple of like blogging collaboratives do this really well also. So they might have several different managers. So maybe there's like 3 or 4 blogs together on the page. And so each one of them might be a manager to share the information. So there's some neat other features that I think most people are not as familiar with. And so that's why I think we really wanted to talk about Google Plus, because I feel like compared to some of the other social networks, I think people know so much less about it, if that makes sense.
I just think people don't, I think people are the whole Google Plus. Yeah. They're just like, well, I have Gmail. And you're like, yes, and Google Plus is part of it. And they don't even, you know, you click on the tab and it shows you like the calendar, everything, YouTube, all of that. And I think many people have never even bothered to do that because they've presumed, well, why do what would I do on that? I mean, it's just, it can never hurt to have another profile up, because nowadays we live in a world where people are going to be searching for you. Yeah. It's a way that you can, I guess, shape your narrative and use, you know, just use the tools to create opportunities for your business, for yourself, and to connect with people.
Yeah, and I think there's a bunch of new features too. All these people were saying, oh, Google Plus is going to die. Google doesn't, you know, they want to get rid of it. And actually they've changed, they've made some changes. I haven't used these yet, but I know there's now a thing called collections where you can sort of organize your posts on a specific topic so that, you know, people might be able to find them more easily. I'm not sure how it works because I haven't used that yet, but there's a bunch of new features. So I think, you know, there's a lot to explore there if you want to give it the time. And then, of course, there's Hangouts and Hangouts on Air. So I know you use none on air, like regular Hangouts a lot. So do you want to talk about how you use those in your business? Because I feel like you probably use them way more than I do.
Oh, I use Hangouts all the time because at this point I have clients around the world. I'm not going to call my client in like El Salvador on my phone and end up with like a $700 bill when we can just both get on Google, have a video conference. That's basically, I think Google Hangout, just the term is kind of maybe a little bit confusing.
Yeah, it sounds very casual.
It's like, also, what does that mean? Just really think about it. It's like you're having a video conference off of your smartphone, your laptop, your iPad with somebody. That's private. And it can be free. It's private, it's free, it's incredibly easy to do. Usually the connection, it's fantastic. And as I said, I've had these with people in the Netherlands, El Salvador, Australia, New Zealand. And it's just, I think it's probably like the wave of the future, I think, for most businesses. I mean, at this point, I do coaching routinely over Google Hangouts. You know, the client and I will both log into our Gmail and I'll instant message and be like, you know, tell me when you're ready to go. And then I just, you know, when you're in instant message, there's a little
Like a little camera.
The camera icon.
Yeah.
You can click on that, or you can schedule a Google Hangout through the calendar. So I do both of those depending on, I guess, how serious it is. But I mean, it's honestly like these are the kind of things that have made it so much easier for me to have a successful small business. I can't even imagine having to start a coaching business or any business from scratch in like the 90s or the 80s.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, my God.
Would be very hard. So I
can't even imagine.
I use Hangouts, not so much for my business, more personally, but I have used them a couple times. I used them to record podcast episodes before, and also just to touch base with someone, like a client of mine, just to clarify things. I think the fact that it has video is helpful, even though, obviously the quality is dependent on the person's lighting and all that. But I think, just to see somebody sometimes is helpful, and also you can show your screen, you can share your screen. So it's not only the person's face that you're looking at. You might be able to look at a video, something on their website or whatever that they want to show you. So there's a couple of options for, what the camera's looking at. You can change that. And then of course there's Hangouts on Air, which is sort of the next level, which is what we're doing today. That's basically a Hangout, but it's also recorded and streamed to your YouTube channel, or to the YouTube channel that you connect it with. So I think adds another element.
And that's also public.
And it's public.
Right.
Now you can put it in a unlisted, sort of, what do you call those on YouTube? The playlist. You can put it somewhere unlisted or private, but yeah, it's a little bit more public. Whereas the Hangout, like you said, that's more for kind of an off the record, non-recorded meeting that you want to have. The Hangout on Air is really something that you're trying to get more people involved with, because the Hangouts, I believe it's only up to 10 people that can directly participate by, either typing or speaking. But the Hangouts on Air, more people can be watching. And so that's another difference as well, as how large is your group. You could always delete it also from your YouTube afterwards if you don't like it. If it doesn't have to stay there forever. It's your channel, so you control it. So that's another thing to think about. And those, I think, are great for just so many businesses can do something great with a Hangout. You know, you can, if you're an artist, you could do a studio tour, or
I love
you
that.
can do a demo. You can just do a quick a Q&A, a live Q&A. I mean, there's so many different things you can use it for.
You can do like a pop-up business thing.
Yeah.
But it's really, if you think about it, I mean, I think a lot of people find it maybe overwhelming, because it's like you're on camera and you're talking to people, but don't think about it as being on camera. Think about it as a way to connect with people and to connect with either your audience in an immediate way, a much more personal way than just posting or tweeting. Or think about it as a way to connect with like friends, to really make people understand your passion and to share that. And to just even have fun. Like, I have friends who, like, we've just gotten on Google Hangouts and like gossiped. It's just a way to like, it's like E.M. Forster famously said, only connect. So I think it's another tool that you can have fun with. And maybe that's a problem for, I think, people who, well, for all of us, and for people who aren't really using Google Plus, you get intimidated by it, and you're like, oh, this isn't going to be fun. I don't know how to use it. I mean, just before, if you want to have like a Hangout, you could just do that with a friend and see how it goes, and you're probably going to have a great time. And then you could start extrapolating, well, the way like you're using your Google written profile to figure out what your brand voice is. You could start having Hangouts maybe with a couple of clients or potential clients, potential audience, just kind of feeling like, what's it like to interact as a representative of my brand? What kind of feedback am I getting? What kind of feedback did I anticipate getting? But I love the artist studio. I think that's a good idea.
You can do classes too. Some people do private lessons for whatever it is that they teach in a Hangout, because again, you can see the other person and they can see you. So you could do all kinds of different classes, to show them. And when I've done something where I want to show, let's say, a crochet stitch or something like that, you can do it live. But what I've actually done is I've set up a video beforehand, and then I've shared my screen so they can see the video. so that it can be really closed in on my hands rather than me worrying while it's live. Oh, how do I get my hands, and are they backwards, and what are the angles, and all that kind of stuff. So you can, like I said, it doesn't just have to be talking heads. You can share your screen. You can show videos. You can do all kinds of stuff in Hangouts and Hangouts on there. So that's something to keep in mind as well, because I think a lot of people, again, they think, oh, Hangouts, it's just me talking.
Right. It's like,
there's no other thing that can be brought in, and that's not really true.
Or they're like, I don't want to be on camera.
Right. You don't have to be on camera.
You don't have to be on camera.
So yeah, that's another thing you could do, like a screencast or something. You could say, I'm going to show you guys how to use this particular website, and you're just showing your screen, and they'll never see your face if you don't want them to. So you can do all that. The one thing I would advise is, if you are going to be using Hangouts or Hangouts on Air for Business, I've seen a lot of Hangout issues in my day, and we've had them too. I mean, sometimes just literally the connection doesn't work. You get kicked out of your own Hangout. I mean, that's rare, but it does happen. But more often what I've seen are people who have never done a Hangout before, and then they decide to have one for their business, and they promote it, and they don't do any kind of trial run. And then the day comes and they don't have any clue how to use anything. So what I would say is, when we first were doing our Hangouts, I did some fake Hangouts with friends of mine where I would just, schedule one and then call them and just say, hey, can you hear me? How does this look? How's the lighting? Is it too bad? That kind of thing. And so I was familiar with all the tools and everything before I have the live one that I'm promoting. Also, I strongly recommend you get there early. We're usually in the room together at least half an hour early. But, we usually turn it on about 15 minutes early. But if you're going to try to just show up on the dot, there's just so many things that can go wrong or not quite work. And if you don't prepare, I think it leaves a bad taste in people's mouth. Somebody, recently I was invited to a Hangout in a community that I'm in, and someone was going to do a training on a topic that I was pretty interested in. And then on the day of, the time came and she wasn't there. Now, at first I thought, oh, maybe there's some technical problem, because like I said, that happens at times. But basically what happened was she didn't find a babysitter, and she wasn't ready. And then she came in like half an hour late to her own thing, and she didn't really know how to use it. And so,
and there were people who waited half an hour.
Well, I didn't wait a half an hour, but then she wrote a blog post about it, what she learned from doing it, problems the first time. But I think a lot of that could have been resolved by planning. And so I think, if you're hoping to use this as part of your business, just, think about the impression you're leaving on people. And I think planning is a great way to avoid some of those problems. So like I said, kind of keep some time before and some time after, just to make sure that, you can get everything in place. And then, if people have questions, you can follow up with them. And that way you're not, sort of frantic and distressed. Because the other thing is, you don't want to look frantic and distressed. You don't want to get in and be like, oh, I'm sorry, you're late. Oh my God, this and that. That's just not how you want to present yourself. Right. You want to be relaxed and calm and, and friendly and cordial and that kind of thing.
And I also feel like preparing and doing Google Hangouts maybe before you're quote unquote technically ready. And remember, these can be as long or as short as you want.
Yeah, you could do 2 minutes.
You could literally, you could do like a 10-minute one with maybe a collaborator or like one person who loves your business, and just have that conversation. It's like the more you do, the more you're going to be able to do. So if you start doing Google Hangouts when you're like, well, I kind of have a few ideas for the business, I'm not sure, they're going to eventually lead, if you commit to them, like in a year, your Google Hangouts,
it'll be awesome.
Will be fantastic. It'll be fascinating.
Yeah.
But you just have to get started now. Again, I feel like that was something that we noticed at the last conference we were at. A lot of people, and maybe also as a coach, I see this, like a lot of people waiting to be perfect about what their brand is, what their ideas are, how they're going to use social media. Like, I can't make any mistakes. I mean, obviously you're going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
Obviously your brand is going to continually evolve as your life evolves. Obviously your knowledge and use of social media is going to evolve. So if there's ideas you have for videos or for classes you want to teach, What if you were to just do like, what if you were to create your own community on Google Plus based on something that you're passionate about, and say like, you know what, I'm going to start offering free 15-minute classes every Tuesday. You know, if you want to join up, like send me an email. Maybe the first day, maybe the first time there'll be like one person there, or nobody. Maybe it'll just be like you and a good friend, and then it's going to keep growing if you stick with it.
And you get better over time. You know, I agree. So many people are, you know, they're kind of trapped in this fear of perfectionism. Like, I can't do this. I don't know how to do it perfectly. And I think there's a difference between being completely unprepared and winging it and, you know, kind of embarrassing yourself and saying, you know, I don't know how to do this 100%, but I have to get it started. You know? And I think if we all waited, you know, this is why a lot of people never get anything done, because they're waiting to know everything there is to know. These platforms change every day. You could have known everything there was to know about Google Plus a month ago or 2 months ago or whenever it was that they introduced collections, and now you don't anymore because it's a new feature. So all your studying and whatever, you know, you can learn so much more also by actually using it. And that's what I found with Google Plus, is that, you know, it's actually fairly intuitive once you know the basics. In terms of like what the terminology is. You know, at first I was, what are communities? You know, oh, those are groups. So, I mean, once you kind of have some understanding of the lingo, I feel like it's really the best thing is to get in there and actually try it. And then, you know, you evolve. You know, each time you say, well, I didn't really like how I did this. Let me do that differently next time, or I should practice this more. You know, we're having weird sounds outside of the door here. Yeah, sorry about that. I think it's a delivery actually, but anyway. So, you know, there's a lot of different things that you can improve over time, but you can't really improve it if you never do it. And that's the thing, you know, I find that especially when it involves any kind of audio visual, people really get anxious about, well, I want to look perfect, and I have to do this perfect, and I don't want to ever say and I don't want to. And it's, you know, that's great. That's good to aspire to that. But if you never practice, if you never put some stuff out there, you know, you're never going to have that chance to evolve and improve yourself. So at least get started.
I mean, even since we've just started really officially doing these podcasts in February,
February, I think.
February. I mean, and here it's July, and since we've been doing these podcasts together, we presented at Social Media Week, we've presented at Blogger, we did a live podcast at Freelancers Union. I mean, we've met all of these people, we've had these opportunities. I think our podcasts are good. I'm not like saying that we should be getting an Emmy for them.
I don't think we're Emmy level as yet.
I mean, I don't, you know, it's not like a cast of thousands. I don't think every single person on the planet is going to be riveted by our podcast. But I do know that if Marie and I had decided around like January, like, well, we don't have a ton of money.
Let's wait until we can get a whole camera crew.
Yeah, like let's wait till
we need an intern that's going to manage all the questions our audience is going to have.
I mean, we wouldn't have pitched to Social Media Week or Blogger all the stuff, because we would have been like, well, why would they have us on? I mean, and even at Blogger, there were people I was meeting in the audience of various events who had blogs getting huge traffic compared to mine, like ginormous traffic. And it was like, but we're on the panel, they're not. I mean, it's sort of like, are you going to at a certain point just say, well, I know some stuff, I've extrapolated from that, I'm going to try and I'm going to keep moving forward, or just decide, well, Google Plus isn't for me.
And, you know, it may not be for you.
It may not be.
I mean,
but give it a try. It could.
One of the things I think is important about being on the social networks where people can tag you in some way is, even if you end up trying Google Plus, you don't like the interface, you decide you don't want to post anything there, it's great to have the option of people tagging you, because that's another way of finding out what people are saying about you. So, for instance, on Twitter, a lot of people, you know, may tag me on Twitter, or mention me as they call it there. And, you know, if I wasn't on Twitter, I wouldn't know that, because they would just type in my name, right? And so it's a great way to gauge not only who's talking about you online, but what are they saying. So even if you're not going to be on Google Plus posting yourself, having a profile there for your business is a great way to kind of do some reconnaissance, because people will say, oh, I love this thing. People who are on Google Plus and love Google Plus, and now that you're going to show up when they put the plus sign and start typing the name of your business, they're going to go ahead and mention you there. So I think that's the other thing to keep in mind, is that, you know, even if you don't want to use it on a regular basis, you can get value from it anyway. And you can also do things like, even again, if you don't ever want to post there, you can periodically look at hashtags that are relevant to your industry and see what in general people are talking about and sharing. And then, you know, that might give you some ideas for a new project. It might give you some ideas for an FAQ. Like, I know a lot of people are always saying, well, nobody's asked me any questions yet. What do I say? Well, what are the general questions people are wondering about your industry? Like right now I'm doing, for my crochet blog, I'm doing a weekly tip. And, you know, even though I have people on my mailing list, and even though people ask me questions all the time, when I went to the mailing list and said, oh, what are your questions? It was like crickets. Nobody responded. And then, but if I keep on track of just general questions I see people saying, let's say on Google Plus or Facebook, I can say, oh, that's a good one. I'm going to answer how to do that. It doesn't necessarily have to have been directed at me. You know, it's a question that people are having about a topic I know something about that I can answer. So it doesn't have to specifically be towards me. So that's something else to think about with Google, because it's so much easier to search. Like Twitter, I feel like the search is challenging.
So
I mean,
tedious.
I love Twitter, but I don't love the search as much. And so I think with Google, you know, with Google Plus, you can always easily find things. It's a great search engine. So, you know, that's another thing you could use it for. Just what's trending in my industry? What are the things people are asking about? Not just people in the industry, but consumers. What are they wondering about?
I think also for like job hunters. I mean, I know that there's a whole thing about LinkedIn, and I certainly use LinkedIn. I mean, I don't want to get in trouble, but I think the LinkedIn website has still a lot of issues. It is not my favorite website. But Google Plus, you could create your profile as a job seeker to reflect your experience in whatever your industry, your experience, your interest, you know, notable skills, projects you've taken initiative of. You can follow on Google Plus the companies and people whom you're interested in. Like if you're interested, I don't know, in working for specific law firms or whatever company, you can start following them and see what kind of things are they discussing, whom are like the trendsetters, the influencers in your industry. You can create a community. I mean, a great thing about creating a community on Google Plus is that you feel less alone, and it's a great way to network. Again, it goes back to like when you're networking and using social media correctly, you're showing, not telling. So it's just another platform to job hunt. And I mean, I know a lot of people still unfortunately feel like the best way to job hunt is just cold, you know, sending out emails, resumes. And it's like, that's certainly one way. I think that that's a very emotionally tough way that can lead you to it can really, like, I think, waste your time if you're not doing it correctly. Or you could have your Google Plus profile where anybody can read it and understand, oh, this is what he or she, is educated in, this is their experience, this is what they're passionate about, or this is, you know, even if you're not sure what you're passionate about, this is what you're good at. And this person could be interesting. And look, they're following all of these companies. I mean, there's plenty of people who are using it. I guess the point about using Google Plus is use it creatively in a way that works for you.
Right.
It's just a way that works for you. Like maybe you're just eventually going to use Google Plus, like to have hangouts with friends. Fine. Great. Whatever makes you happy.
I mean, for those of us that are solopreneurs or freelancers, you spend a lot of time alone. So
yeah, exactly.
A hangout with some friends could be great. And a lot of times you know, some of your friends are virtual friends. They don't live near you. So it's a great way to connect. It may be, you know, important to your business actually to reinvigorate and spend some social time. So don't necessarily, you know, look down upon the social aspects of Google Plus. The other thing I would add with the communities is that you can adjust your settings to each community that you're a member of. So you can turn notifications off if you don't want to be emailed when there's an update, if you just want to check into the group from time to time. If you turn notifications on, you'll get emails when people post things. So depending on the group and how interested you are in the topic and the frequency and the size of the group and all that will kind of determine if you want to keep notifications on or off. But there's a group that I'm in where people post a lot, and I would say 95% of it I'm totally uninterested in, but 5% of the time there's some really important stuff. So I keep the notifications on because it says there's like a bracket that tells you the name of the community. So right away I know this is, this type of community. It's not a direct email to me, and I can, easily screen them. Or of course, if you're using Google for email, you can set up filters so that, those will go to a specific folder or however you want to handle it. But I think there are ways of, managing the community so you don't get overwhelmed, because you can easily, like you were saying, if people are posting a lot. And of course, you have to try communities too, like not the communities that you're setting up, but other communities. There's a bunch of different communities for crochet. They all have a little bit of a different personality. Some of it is based on, of course, the moderators. So you may decide, well, this group's not really for me. I thought it would be interesting. And then, you can just leave. So don't feel pressure to stay in the community. By the way, when you leave, a big notification like this person left the group doesn't happen. You just sort of disappear off the numbers. So you can feel free to just quietly make your exit at any point if you'd like. So that's another thing to keep in mind with the communities.
But I really do think it goes back to like just trying to let yourself have some fun with social media, and it's okay to use it as much or as little as suits you. I mean, you can't worry so much about like, well, this is how other people are using it, but you're not them. Yeah, they're not you. Your business or whatever the reason you're on is fine as long as it works for you. So maybe nowadays, especially because social media is changing, maybe you're going to eventually realize like, I don't have a website. I just have a Google Plus business page, and I just do everything over Hangouts. Yeah. And that's all I do. Hangouts and tag people. But I'm making money, and I like where my business is going, or I just did that and I got a job. Yeah. It's not for anybody else to tell you that you're doing it wrong. Yeah. If it works for you.
I mean, the only doing it wrong thing I would say is,
not trying.
Not trying, and also just, I think sometimes people get carried away on social media with humor, quote unquote. I think you have to be cautious about humor that is, about other groups or, controversial topics. I think unless you are a full-time comedian, even then, but that, that's your role and that's what you're projecting on social media. I think you have to be kind of cautious with sort of controversial types of humor, because it's very difficult for people to read that in text and get it that it's supposed to be funny versus that's what you really think and all that kind of stuff. So I think, those are the only things I would say. Use a little caution.
I think even more. Media. Well, I think humor definitely, but I also think like your personal life, like people who, this might be kind of off topic, but people who are like constantly on social media, like everything my husband does, like sharing their husband or their wives or their partners,
their children,
personal lives. And so whenever they have a fight, they're talking about it. Whenever like they may have the makeup sex, you're like, I don't need to know any of this. And from an entrepreneurial standpoint, those are people who then when they want to start a business, in my head, it's like, I'm not going to do business with you. You're sharing your husband or partner's personal life. Like, no, it
has to be consistent with your brand.
Right.
I would
like
say.
just
if you're going to be, like a sex therapist, then I think that's totally cool.
That's fine.
Because it's like, hey, she's comfortable with her sexuality. It's obvious from her posts. I can't wait to use her as a sex therapist. Right. But if you're going to be, in a more conservative industry, so I agree. That is one thing to keep in mind, is that, you can experiment with different voices, of course,
and
because you're kind of getting comfortable, but, do some thought about how does this relate to the type of business I want to do. I don't think that's,
how do I want people to see me?
Yeah. How do I want people to perceive me? And,
what do
I think my audience will like? And by that, I don't mean, be fake and only do what your audience wants to see. No. But if your audience, let's say, is conservative Christians, maybe there are certain things you just won't talk about because you think it, it could inflame them or make them upset.
Right. I don't even think it has to be conservative Christians. Like if your audience, right. I mean, but if your audience are parents, you know, and you're constantly
parents of like preschool age children,
right, or just parents in general, and you're constantly airing your dating life. Like there used to be, I'm not going to say his name, but there was a guy on Facebook who actually made a business all on Tumblr, kind of like he was a therapist, and then he made a huge business, and then he would do things on Facebook, like he would talk about his date nights. And it just was like, I don't need to know about your date nights. Like I like your therapeutic advice, but I don't need to know about when you're getting action or whatever. Like I'm happy for you, but I don't think you should be. And then he would like talk, I mean, he would just go on about it, and it was like, I guess dating for you is really important, but aren't you an adult? Like, because that to me, I just felt like if you can share that kind of stuff, I would personally be skeptical about going to you with my intimate problems.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and that's the other thing to think about, depending, of course, on your type of business. If your business is going to have a component of dealing with confidential information, sharing information about other people can make people leery. It's different when you're only talking about yourself. But I think it's sort of like when you go on a job interview and you badmouth your past job. You know, your past job might have been terrible, but the new employer doesn't want to hear all this stuff because they're thinking, oh, you're going to talk about me like that's your next job. So that's the thing, I guess, with social media. So, but again, even there, you know, if you make a misstep, for the most part, you know, although we have all heard the horror stories, for the most part, you know, unless you have some huge following, you know, which presumably you don't at the beginning, you can usually just
presumably you're not watching our podcast. Unfortunately, if you do, at least not yet. I mean, maybe soon, but not right now. I don't think you're going to be like, I've got 5 million followers, Maria Carlota on Google Plus. Yeah, what should I be doing? We'd be like, you might be confused. But thank you.
Thanks for stopping by.
Thanks for visiting.
So, but I do think, just keeping in mind those kind of things. But again, you know, it all depends on what you're trying to emphasize. Like if you're, you know, the tell-all mommy blogger, then tell all, you know, that's part of who you are. But if you're the, you know, accountant, you know, who's helping somebody with their private financial matters.
Like Deloitte, I wouldn't.
Yeah. Then it's a little awkward.
But I also think, and this goes back to what we were saying at the beginning, part of whatever your business is, or if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a writer or an artist, part of figuring out your business, yourself, is figuring out yourself, is figuring out your voice. And if nothing else, Google Plus is a great way to start creating that voice. So many people feel, I've had clients who immediately like have this like burst from the heavens, and they feel that they have to start a blog. A blog is great, but it's tremendous responsibility.
Sure.
And so they'll start a blog, and there'll be like a month where they're blogging like almost every day. Like every day is, you know, the sound and the fury, and then they get tired. Or, you know, life happens, something happens in their personal life, and then one day they look up and they're like, oh my God, I haven't blogged for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And so that makes them feel bad, and then they don't do anything else. So that's one way. I think a better way would be to say, well, what if I was to make a plan that I'm going to start using Google Plus as my makeshift blog, and I'm going to write literally out a list, maybe in a Google document or whatever. I'm going to write out a list of ideas for 6 weeks worth of content, presuming I'm going to blog on Google Plus, let's say 3 times a week. And I'm going to have this 6 weeks worth of content, and I'm going to go through it. I'm going to use hashtags. I'm going to tag people in them, and I'm going to start creating this pattern, a realistic pattern, a strategy that I can live with. Maybe I'm going to do a couple of Hangouts, and I'm going to use this as a period of understanding and learning and really stretching, you know, broadening my horizons. At the end of those 6 weeks, I'm not saying that you're going to be like, no, I know exactly my voice, but you're probably going to have a little bit more confidence. And then if you
just from the practice.
Just from the practice, just from getting used to writing stuff in public. And then 6 weeks after that, you might be like, okay, now what? This was great. Now I really have to have a blog. Or you might already by then be creating a following where you're like, I don't need a blog. A blog is a responsibility that I'm not ready to have right now, but this is actually getting me interest. So it's about letting yourself and your business, and whatever that business may be, even if it's not strictly a business, letting it succeed, using the opportunities and step-by-step strategy and taking it slow. You don't have to become an expert on Google Plus tomorrow or ever, but you could just get on it and try it.
Yeah, I mean, as they say, Rome wasn't built in a day. I think a lot of us put all this pressure on ourselves to be experts on everything in 1 minute. That's really not how it works. And again, as I said earlier, these platforms evolve. So Google Plus today is different than it was 6 months ago, different than when it started. Right. And so there'll be features added, taken away, changed, I'm sure, over time. And so you're never going to be this expert that knows everything and there's nothing more to learn. So just get rid of that idea, because that's not how it works on social media
or in life.
Or in life. Just know as much as you can know and learn more as you go along.
Be willing to learn. Yeah,
and that's it.
And don't get overwhelmed. I mean, I just there was stuff that I learned at our panel that I was there were tools that I was putting on my website, and at first it was a little bit disconcerting. I was like, okay, I've never used this before, and then I used it and I was like, oh, that was it. Okay, yeah, that's fine. Not gonna make a whole big deal out of it, but I guess life is about learning and challenging yourself. I think
being more flexible about learning things is definitely something that's going to help you.
If you want to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Without it, forget it.
Yeah, there's just so many changes. It's not, how it was in 1850 where things changed much slower and you had so many years to incorporate any new change. I mean,
it's not even how it was in the 90s.
Yeah, now things are moving quickly and, you learn what you can and you adapt as much as you can. And again, if you're not perfect, you're not the perfect hashtagger. Yeah, so some of your posts won't be, found in a search maybe, but probably from other words in the post, they'll still be found. So, I mean, there's really not a disastrous outcome for that. So just, more practice.
Just make it fun. I think I think just the problem is there is tremendous information overload. And there's this feeling of it's not fun. There's so much I have to do. There's so much I have to learn. There's so many new social media platforms where it's just do what you can. You're one person and try and have fun with it. I mean, if you're not going to have fun with it, but I do think you have to be willing to learn if you are really trying to change your life or start anything new, but you're not willing to put yourself out of your comfort zone. Forget it.
Yeah,
that I think is just not going to work. So based on my own experience.
I mean, a great example of this is my dad. He uses social media personally, but he gave himself a challenge a couple years ago. He was like, I'm going to try Facebook, not for business, it's personal. I'm going to post X amount of times per week, and I'm going to try it for a year. That's kind of the challenge he gave himself. And now you would never guess, right? Because he's on Facebook all the time. And he recently added Google Plus and Twitter. And he basically shares a certain amount of times a week, I think. And, I know with Facebook that he picked particular days that he's going to post and things like that. So it hasn't, taken over his life or anything like that. And again, this is for personal, not for his business. But he's been willing to say, I didn't grow up with social media, but I'm willing to try it and see how I can find value. And, he's had his own, whereas some people share a lot of personal pictures, he mostly shares links about, he's an artist, so about art that he's interested in or, and I think, he's made it work for him, his own personal way of using it, but because he's been willing to experiment and try things out. And I think that's, if a person can do that in their personal life, as a business owner, you should be willing to try that also. And as we said, there's a lot of benefits to using Google Plus specifically, and so many people have access to it versus some of the other platforms that might be, specific to having this kind of smartphone or, whatever it is. And so it's definitely one to consider and at least play around with a little bit.
I mean, I think you could just, if you're thinking about how would I use it, let's say, to find a job, or how would I use it to find a job? It's rewrite your profile, and they literally, when you go into your profile on Google Plus, it's going to give you structured, almost structured questions, and then start thinking about, at the very least, I would say rewrite your profile from the point of view of your ideal reader. What do you want your ideal reader, like your ideal hiring manager or boss, to take away from it? And then maybe think to yourself, what are 10 companies that I'm ideally interested in? Are they on Google Plus? I'm going to go follow those communities on Google Plus.
Mm-hmm.
If you could do that, pat yourself on the back.
Yeah,
you've done
a big job for
You've
today.
done a huge job.
job.
Go have a cocktail or go take a hot bath, do whatever makes you happy, and then start following them and see what other people are talking about. If you're, for example, a writer, you could maybe share
there's a lot of self-publishing.
There's a lot of self-publishing.
Mm-hmm.
You could share links to your articles. You could you could share even bits of your writing. You can talk about the books that you admire. I mean, some of my favorite authors on their birthday, I will share like a link to one of my favorite of their books and maybe a photo of them. I've literally gotten clients that way because people will +1, which is like the Google Plus version of like.
Yeah.
So they'll +1 and then they'll start following me. And I've had people who 6 months later were like, wow, I started following you because I love Joan Didion. I liked your other books. And now, I finally read your profile and I see that you coach. Can I get a consultation?
Yeah.
It's about letting things happen naturally.
Yeah.
Happen organically. Like you can't want to eat organically, but live and have everything happen immediately.
Yeah.
It's about taking your time and letting you and your ambitions develop.
Yeah. And related to that, a lot of people like to try before they buy, so to speak. Yeah. And so one way for them to check you out is by looking at your social profiles and see kind of your voice. What are you interested in? How do you talk? Does that seem like someone I'd want to work with? And that could be, whether you're a teacher, a coach, it could be if you have clients in all kinds of different industries. So, it's not going to necessarily happen overnight, like you said, but having that kind of body of work building up on Google Plus or on whatever platform, it's a great way for people to kind of get a taste of you without having to plunk down the money. But then eventually they'll say, oh, you know what? I've kind of seen how this person is. I think they're, ethical. Their values are like mine, whatever it is. They have the same likes. I like their voice, whatever it is. I'm going to, actually now reach out to them. So that was a great tip.
Right. And also just realize, I have like a Facebook business page. I have a website. I'm on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Google Plus. I have people whom I'm connected with on all of those. But then again, there's a lot of people who follow me on Google Plus who I haven't even met, and they're around the world. And those are people who they might not have found out about my website. They might not have looked at my business Facebook page, but now they've found me on that way. So it's a way, if you've decided no, I'm not going to be on it. That's your own choice, but I do think you're cutting yourself off from opportunities to do something that maybe you love.
Definitely. So with that being said, we're coming to the end of our show. So again, you in a couple days, you'll be able to get the audio for this episode along with our notes. And that will be at nofrillsmallbusiness.com/6. And then our next hangout is going to be on August 17th, Monday again, same time, same place. Do you want to chat a little bit about the topic? Because I think
we were talking, what was the key word you had? Comparisons. How can we sum that up? We were going to talk about how, unfortunately, so many of us waste our own time comparing ourselves to others without really knowing what the situation is. And like a quick example is, I think when you're an entrepreneur and you're starting out, if you don't have a ton of money, when you're starting out, you're going to meet people who maybe are in the same field, who have been doing this for a while. And they're like, oh, I make, and you see them like on Facebook going to like Jamaica or going to the Bahamas or like buying stuff. And you think to yourself, wow, like they're making all this money. How am I ever going to make this money? And it can be a way to really shut down your own ambitions. And I would just say, as somebody who's been an entrepreneur for a long time, and it feels like lifetimes, but I think it's like now 7 years, and start with no money, you're comparing yourself to an image. Yeah. You don't know how they got the money to go to Jamaica. Or when they say that they make bank, you don't know how they're arriving at that. So it could be that maybe they do make a tremendous amount of money blogging. Right. God bless them.
Could be they're way, way in debt.
It could be that their spouse has a 6-figure job and supports them. It could be that they have an inheritance. It could be, that they're living off of credit cards. So if you can really waste a lot of time and break sorry, break your own heart comparing yourself.
So that's what we'll be talking about on August 18th, and we hope to see you, or sorry, 17th?
August 17th.
2015. So thank you so much for joining us today, and have a wonderful month until we're back here.
See you next month.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.